Hello, and welcome to CLEA'S World. I am Clea, and today I would like to share with you more information I've received from the 25th dimension during my last BQH, Beyond Quantum Healing, hypnosis session. In this case, the practitioner was Lorrayne, and so I'll be reading from a transcript. And when I refer to Lorrayne, I'm referring to the hypnotist asking me questions I prepared in advance of the session, unless otherwise specified. And when I refer to me, I'm speaking of myself under hypnosis, which means that the answers are coming from the 25th dimension. And so I'm going to start reading here, but before I read the first question too, which talks about the royals in history, I wanted to tell you the reason this has come up. I even had this question is because I've been watching, which is so unusual for me. I binge watch something maybe once every 5 years. And so I went through a phase while we were waiting for the takedown where I was actually binge watching. There was a show about Queen Victoria and another show about Catherine the Great because I like period dramas. And so I thought it was interesting how they portrayed them. So I wanted to ask about them. So here's the question. Lorrayne, have the royals always been reptilian? For example, Queen Victoria or Catherine the Great? Me. So generally speaking, yes, not all of them and not always. Each family has not always had reptilian DNA necessarily. However, these two people were. And generally speaking, yes, the dark has always wanted to get ahead. So of course, they've always made sure that they were in charge. So while there can always be somebody who's not a reptilian, and we've also said there are reptilians that are not dark necessarily, because everybody born, the DNA does not dictate, your DNA does not dictate which side you're on. But generally speaking, if you have reptilian DNA and you're born to certain families, it's just going to be easier for you to be in the fold. And so, yeah, most of these royal families are reptilian. Lorrayne, thank you. Have they always done child sacrifices? Me. Yeah, unfortunately, that's been a thing for a couple of resets now, not just the last reset, unfortunately. In fact, this was already going on with the previous reset, and that is why actually it was one of the reasons we decided on the takedown. And so, yeah, it's been going on for a long time. So yes, these families were always part of it. Sacrifices have been around for a long time. You know this, since ancient times, even based on our own history. We just like to think the sacrifices are no longer done. The sacrifices have always been done. They just went underground. Lorrayne, yeah, it's a disgusting practice. Me. It's funny because every time these people talk about sacrificing, they never sacrifice themselves. They're always perfectly happy with sacrificing somebody else. Like, yeah, I'll sacrifice, but I'm sacrificing somebody else. Well, if this was a true sacrifice, you would have to sacrifice yourself, wouldn't you? Otherwise, how is it a sacrifice for you to give away, the idea is that you're giving away something you care about, and they were laughing here. But I guess if you're the kind of person who's going to sacrifice a living being, you probably don't care about much, do you? It's just, we laugh. Of course, it's not a laughing matter. We just find it very fascinating how we lie to ourselves all the time, because the dark is doing the same thing. They're lying to themselves. So they have to use these words to make themselves feel better about what they're doing. It's really interesting what we do here, how we play this game of separation and ignorance. We pretend to not know what is going on. Lorrayne, we do lie to ourselves. Okay, were the Romanovs part of the dark, the ones that were overthrown by the Bolshevik Revolution, or are they exceptions? Me. Yeah, so no, there were a few of the Romanovs. Again, every family has had a mix of things, but no, they were also part of the dark. They were also reptilian. But again, some of them get taken out because they might not be towing the line or whatever it is, and that's what's happened. Basically, they changed the agenda. They decided they were going to have something really evil, which was the Bolshevik Revolution and whatnot. And all of a sudden, you have because, for example, even now we're seeing Russia as being the center of some kind of revival where they're taking back the power for humanity. It doesn't mean that the Russian politicians are on the side of the light. So you don't have to be on the side of the light to be in the bullseye of the dark. You can be one of them or somebody who is not exactly one of them, and they can still target you. Lorrayne, oh yes, the history of the Romanovs and how they were shunned by their family members in the British royal family is very interesting. Okay, what's behind the Dutch farmers' protest? Is this a movement of the light? Will this collapse the government in the Netherlands, or what will happen? Me. Yeah, so some of the people in the government, the Dutch government, are going to resign. And again, we're going to see it play out a little bit like in the UK. And so will it collapse as in there will be no more government in the Netherlands? No, again, we don't want to see that. We don't want to deal with that. But it will be very clear that there's a new order of the day. So yes, these protests are making a difference. It's not a movement of the light as in the people doing it are in the middle. They're not necessarily on the side of the light. Of course, there are people of the light doing that as well, but it's mostly in the middle. And so they're doing this in a 3D way. But really, again, why is this happening? It's happening because everything is accelerating. So it's not just that the dark now is trying to, they've turned the screw even more. They have not let any time go to waste. They finish locking them down and poisoning them. And whoever's left over, they're like, oh, we got to finish you off with this other thing. So now we stepped right into climate change as an excuse to finish off, businesses, farmers, whoever's made it. The farmers have been under attack for a long time, even during the last 2.5 years. We know this. They were trying to use the excuse to take away laborers. They've been trying to cause food shortages for a while. And there's a question coming up about food shortages. We already talked about this also. There's going to be pockets of it. You might be missing some items, but no, we're not going to experience famine where you're going to have to skip meals because there's no food to be had. So it doesn't matter. They're doing all of this. Again, this is all playing in this chaos of things crumbling in a good way though, because when we look at it, we see the little guy overcoming, it's a David against Goliath kind of thing. Lorrayne, yes, it's interesting. Okay, a question from EDC. What about the over 100 food processing plants that have been mysteriously destroyed in the past year in the USA? Who's behind that? Me. Yeah, so again, the dark. It's always the dark behind destruction, this type of destruction, this waste, this loss of life. Because, there have been millions of chickens, for example, that have been destroyed. They're being killed, okay? Let's use the correct terminology. We like to distance ourselves from these things that are happening. We call it destroying, harvesting. These essences, these brothers and sisters who look like chickens have been killed. Yeah, so the dark has been still working at this. But again, they've been working at this for a long time. It's not happening. And again, why are they working at this? Because they're trying to still pass this very boring New World Order. I mean, it has not been new for a long time. I think we can safely change the name. Because it's not a new idea anymore. It's not coming. It's not in the future. It will never happen. And so they have to play with food shortages because of climate change. Everything is climate change nowadays. If you fall off the sidewalk and you twist your ankle, it's because of climate change. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's a joke. And so none of this will happen. Yeah, would they like it to? Yes, of course. They're doing what they can. But this shows you that they're not as powerful as they were before. If they're at the point where they're burning down distribution facilities, they're blocking trucks, they've killed millions of animals with one excuse or the other, and still we're not feeling it. What have we felt of this? Prices have gone up at the supermarket, and when you consider everything they've done, you can realize that they're powerless. All they're doing is running around smashing as much stuff as they can on their way out. They're really not making any difference. They look like a bunch of lunatics, and they are. They're crazy. They've always been crazy. They're psychopaths. That's how they show up here. They've lost completely. So no, it's nothing to worry about. Lorrayne, okay, you said that basically 90% of the dark have left and of the original numbers. There was only 3% that was dark, but there's a lot of stuff that is still happening. How many of those in the middle, which was the largest percentage, maybe it was 20% who were dark, 30% who were light, and 50% who were in the middle? How many of those 50% in the middle are left? Me. Well, not many, because not everybody, but most of the light workers, well, first of all, the light workers, 12,000, obviously they're all going to New Earth, so they're all still here. But most of the people on the side of the light are still here. And so really, when you do the math, you don't have very many people in the middle who are left over. And this is what we're referring to, that even if the people that needed to work, physically work to make these things happen, they're not there to make it happen. So even when you're burning down X amount of fields to destroy the food, you need people to do this, and there are less and less people. You think that it's hard to recruit for airlines right now or for hospitals? They're having the same issues. So it's problematic. I mean, the whole system is collapsing. You cannot, it's not just energetically, you're not supporting these ideas. Is that even physically, you don't have anybody to manifest these ideas anymore. And that's what's happening. So not many in the middle. I mean, you can do your math. Again, many of the people on the side of the light, not everybody's here from the side of the light. Some have left, but many of the people from the side of the light are here. And actually they're telling me 20%. I don't know how much that is. Okay, but yeah, 20% on the side of the light are here. And so there aren't that many people in the middle. They're saying 20% of the original number. And here I did do some math because I was losing track of, well, how many of us were still here. And so I did some back of the envelope calculations. I'm just going to share them with you here. And so this is what I got. So originally 1.7 billion people with SS. So we're 2 billion people originally, including 300 million NPCs. So again, 1.7 billion with SSs, more or less 50-50 going to go with the aliens and the other 50% going to 3D chambers. And so basically out of that 1.7 billion, 30% were supposed to be on the side of the light. And so 20% of the original 30% is left. And that gives me 102 million people. So 102 million people left on the side of the light. Now, there are only 200 million people left at this time who still have SSs, about 200 million people. So half of them are on the side of the light. I don't think we have ever had this balance or imbalance in favor of the light ever before. And so in terms of the dark, again, if we use the 1.7 million people, 1.7 billion people original numbers, we multiply it by 20%, which was the side of the dark originally, and then we multiply by the 10% that's left, we get 34 million people on the side of the dark. So there's 100 million people, 102 million people on the side of the light, and 34 million people on the side of the dark. So I say, yay. This is exciting stuff. So again, not a lot of people in the middle, because if you do 102 plus 34, we're 136. We're about 200 million people. So about 70 million people in the middle. And which again, in the middle is the fluid, the more fluid SSs that don't mind, you know, dipping in and out of light or dark things. They just want to have that freedom to move from one side to the other of the spectrum. And so really it makes sense that we will see what we're seeing, which is, you know, a lot of things are crumbling. Lorrayne, we're seeing a ramping up of mass shootings. These, and I cannot say this word, but let's call it untrue flags that seem to be ramping up. Are we going to be seeing more of these? Or is the one that happened in the United States on the 4th of July, the last one? Me. So there might be one more, but not necessarily. And the reason is that you cannot, even if you are making, you know, faking these, or you're causing them, say that they were caused by a shooter, when in reality you set this up, you can only do so many, because that would, what would happen if they had one a week, or one every 2 weeks, or even one a month? People would think, wow, either people have suddenly started shooting left and right, or something is very off. Do you see? You have to be, even when you're pushing a narrative, you're so desperate to push, you kind of have to be careful, because you can be found out just by the fact that it's becoming unrealistic. And that's what we were referring to when we were joking about, you can twist your ankle, and they're saying it's climate change. This is what it's becoming, even to people that might have been prone to believe that climate change was happening. Now they're like, well, that's weird. Everything is climate change now. And this is the problem, because they keep pushing these. They have no discipline to how they're pushing these narratives anymore. And people have just been fed up, and they become aware of these tactics. And all of a sudden, it's almost like a drum roll. We've heard a drum roll for over 2 years about one subject. And now all of a sudden, all we talk about is this other subject. Even people who are deeply asleep, and again, we already know those are gone, are like, well, this is weird, because we already said a lot of the people going with the aliens are not necessarily awake. They might just be open to some things, but it doesn't mean that they don't watch CNN, for example. But all of a sudden, even they are asking questions like, well, this is strange. And that's what it takes. We already said this. The second you start asking a question, you don't know where you're going to end up. And so they have to be careful. But the problem is they are not careful. That's what we're saying. There might be even one more. They're not careful because the dark has lost it. And so they're desperate. So they're like, okay, fine. So yeah, This is also going to lose steam because, again, we don't want to deal with that either because that's not fun. We're going to see more fun things, like, for example, the guide stones coming down. We're going to see the fun that came from Q. Q always had fun things going on, okay? Where they were telling us of things that you were like, yes, one more point for our side. Things like that, not dire things like, oh my goodness, another shooting. Because unfortunately, in these shootings, there are people that get hurt. There are children that get hurt. It's not fun. It's not a cute thing. So obviously, we don't want any more of those. Lorrayne. Yes, and often a lot of people who we're told they are killed in those don't really get killed. So one has to question everything. Me. Yeah, but there are people that do get hurt. But there are people that do get killed. Not everybody's a crisis actor. I know that's what you're referring to, crisis actors. Absolutely plenty of them. And some are not real. You're absolutely right. There have been instances where nothing was true. But there have been instances when things have happened, like in a Texas shooting. Unfortunately, children were hurt. Lorrayne. Unfortunately, the school apparently had been closed down for a year and they brought children in to be slaughtered. These people are evil. Well, those essences that are dark, there are the dark side of us to bring out and make us aware of all aspects of ourselves. I recognize that, but I still don't like it. Okay, this is another question from me. What's the story behind the so-called US president who says that gas prices will continue going up until we accept the new world order? Is this the dark just acting crazy at this point? Me. Yes, yeah, nothing is going to happen, none of that. We're not going to see the full collapse because the truth is the president has been selling all the oil reserves. They're manipulating the prices. They just announced Shell had record profits for the past few weeks. Of course, they get to increase their margins like 200-300%. So we are led to believe that it's because the cost went up and therefore we have to bear the cost. It's almost like you pass the higher cost onto the consumer, but no, in reality, they just do whatever they want. It's something that they can sell at 1. They decided we're going to sell it at 5. And that's why they're selling it at that. And so these are just decisions. These are a group of people. They decide to do whatever they want, as long as they have a good excuse. But they didn't even care to have a good excuse. They were increasing prices well before the Ukraine situation even came to the fore. So they don't even need excuses. They do exactly, they've always done whatever they wanted because there were enough people that were so, it's almost like you're so bored. You want to see all these things going up and down and happening. You feel alive. You feel like, oh, stuff is happening. But it's drama. It's low-level drama, right? And we're just tired of that. And we don't want the low-level drama anymore. Many of us want to play at much higher levels of vibration. Anyway, so now this is still, again, this is what we're seeing of what they're doing behind the scenes, what they would wish for this to become. None of that is going to happen. So really, when you think about it, how powerful are they? They were paying $5 for gas, $5 per gas. That's it. That's all the power they have. They are irrelevant. They've become completely irrelevant. Nobody's even watching them unless they're laughing at them. Governments are not important anymore. So I'm going to end here. And I want to thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.